It's now my pleasure to introduce Ewan Hoyle from Glasgow South, who is moving the motion. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Conference. For too long, drug policy has been a no-go area for politicians. And there is a simple one-word explanation for why. Cowardice. Cowardice, plain and simple. I have talked to Liberal Democrat representatives, from councillors to the most senior members of the parliamentary parties, and the first thing they ask is, how do we sell this to the Sun? How do we sell this to the Daily Mail? I'll have just described policies that could massively decrease crime, bring young girls working the streets back to their families, take dealers out of communities so that the kids growing up there have a fighting chance of success. And the default position of politicians is, nah, can't be done. The press will crucify us. I really don't know what disappoints me more, the lack of the moral instinct to say what needs to be said to help communities stay healthy and safe, or the politicians' complete lack of faith in their ability to communicate important ideas effectively. And it is vital that we communicate these ideas. The war on drugs is not working, but it is essential that we keep fighting. Drugs are harmful. They can take young people to places that are every parent's worst nightmare: insanity, disease, destitution, prostitution, death. We have to keep fighting in the best way we can to stop more young people from all walks of life slipping into lives of misery and early graves. But we are still fighting a massive 21st century drug problem with 20th century weapons. So how should we fight the war on drugs? In countries like Portugal and Switzerland, they saw their drug problems getting rapidly worse. But instead of resorting to tough rhetoric and knee-jerk policies, they cut cowardly politicians out of the loop and asked experts in medicine, sociology, psychology and law to recommend how they could best address the problem. When those experts came back saying that drug use and addiction were medical issues and not issues of morality or criminality, the politicians accepted their recommendations. Public and political reaction was divided at first, but when the results started to become clear, the public and politicians accepted that a better way had been found. The drug problems of these countries have never even come near to the problems that we face in the UK in 2011. But politicians are too scared to question the status quo, and they ignore the expert advice from the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs, which challenges it. Legal regulation is one policy that experts find it hard to recommend, for to follow such recommendations would be to defy the UN drug conventions, well-intentioned documents that nonetheless seriously undermine the three pillars of the UN's work: peace and security, development and human rights. The illegal drug market in the UK is estimated to be worth around £6 billion each year. It isn't taxed, and the vast majority of the profits go into the hands of organised criminal gangs. This includes millions of pounds for the Taliban in Afghanistan, with which they can purchase the bombs and bullets that murder our brave soldiers. We have to stop enriching criminals. In the wake of the riots, commentators bemoaned the lack of authority figures in deprived estates. But there are authority figures. They have fancy cars, expensive jewellery and a defiant masculinity that the kids can't help but be attracted to. The cash-in-hand jobs in the drug business that they provide mean many kids simply don't need to engage with the rest of society in order to succeed. We could undermine these criminal idols if we removed their control of the drug trade and placed it into the careful hands of the state. The motion calls for models of cannabis regulation to be investigated. I personally favour sale from pharmacies. If we want to send a message that cannabis is harmful, and we should, how better to do so than through a health professional at the point of intended purchase? No pharmacist is going to suggest a customer progresses to the use of heroin or crack, and no pharmacist would sell to a child. With the illegal cannabis dealers we have at the moment, we do not have that security. It is important to remember that this motion is not calling for a radical leap in policy. It merely requests a level-headed examination of the weapons that are available to us for our new 21st century war on drugs. Have no doubt there are better ways to restrict the ability of drugs to do harm, ways which do not themselves harm individuals and the communities in which they live. How much courage does it take to ask for expert help in identifying them? Trust in politicians is at an all-time low, so I think this is a good time for politicians to reflect on just what their job is. Surely it is to identify, support and communicate policy that will improve the lives of their constituents. Rather than take the easy route to a few swing votes, it is time politicians looked voters in the eye and attempted to explain complex concepts. If they see us striving always to do the right thing rather than the popular thing, then the trust will return and the votes will follow. This is not a party political issue. To demonstrate, Chris Mullin wrote this in his diary when he was Labour Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee in 2002. Is it possible to have a mature discussion about any difficult issue in the country? Instead of wobbling around in the middle of the road, attracting flack from all sides, wouldn't it be nice to do the right thing for once and tell Rupert Murdoch, Paul Dacre, Conrad Black et al. To fuck? Well, you get the idea. And with that in mind, I want Nick Clegg to walk into David Cameron's office, lay this motion on his desk and say this is part of what is needed to get this country out of a serious hole. Cameron knows this is the right path. He was on that same select committee in 2002 and he shared Chris Mullin's conclusions. But there is one thing that will give him pause for thought. Cowardice. Cowardice, plain and simple. In closing, I would like to dedicate this motion to Tom Alderton, whose passion and bravery in telling his story first inspired me to set off on the road that has led me here. Tim Farron had Cathy come home. I had the documentary Killer in a Small Town. I would also like to apologise to all those families that have been afflicted by insanity, illness, destitution, prostitution and death since I set off on this road for not getting to this stage sooner. And to all those who will be afflicted in the future, should my words today not have had the power to bring change. Thank you.